A quiet morning, as the gentle sunlight streamed through the windows of the luxurious mansion, Ethan stood leaning against the window, gazing at the bustling New York City in the distance. In contrast to the hurried scene outside, his life, being a successful billionaire CEO, a man who possessed everything anyone could dream of, felt strangely empty. The luxury cars, high-profile meetings, and expensive contracts could not fill the void in his heart. Suddenly, a faint bark echoed from outside. Ethan turned around and looked towards the garden, where a small dog, with matted fur and lost eyes, was waiting, looking up at him with a pleading gaze. It seemed that nothing in the world could make him stop. But the dog's eyes, filled with fear and hope, made him pause. This dog wasn't a stranger, and Ethan wasn't someone who would easily ignore anything. But in that moment, when the dog's eyes met his, a strange connection was formed. Ethan couldn't explain why, but he knew he had to do something. And so, a journey would begin, a journey not only to change the life of a lost dog, but also to change Ethan's life forever. It was the beginning of a story about unconditional friendship, loyalty, and sacrifice, a story where, sometimes, the most beautiful things come from the most unexpected moments. The night descended over the dazzling New York City. The brightly lit skyscrapers painted a magnificent picture in the heart of the sleepless city. Here, people were always racing against time, fame, and endless dreams of luxury. And in the highest corner of a towering building, in a magnificent penthouse, Ethan Carter stood thoughtfully before a large window. A glass of red wine swirled in his hand, reflecting the lights of the city below. To an outsider, Ethan was the epitome of success, a businessman owning a billion-dollar empire, having everything anyone could wish for. But if someone looked deeply into his gray-blue eyes, they would see something else, a strange emptiness, as if he was lost within his own life. Outside, an unexpected rainstorm arrived. The first raindrops hit the windowpane, pattering like tears falling on an indifferent surface. The wind howled between the buildings, carrying the chill of a spring night. Ethan placed the glass down, intending to return to work, when suddenly, he froze. It was a small bark, almost swallowed by the sound of the rain. At first, he thought he had imagined it. But then, the sound came again, weak, urgent. Ethan furrowed his brow and stepped closer to the window. He squinted, trying to see into the large garden below. Under the dim light of the yard, a small figure was trembling in the rain. It wasn't large, only about medium size, with golden fur now soaked and hanging limp. Its body was small and skinny, as if it had been wandering for days without food. The fur was matted and dirty, but its eyes, those eyes, glowed strangely. Those eyes, Ethan felt a pang in his chest. Those eyes weren't just of a wandering animal. They contained sadness, longing, and perhaps, hope. The rain continued to fall. The dog stood still, not moving closer but not leaving either. It silently stared at the door, as though waiting for a miracle. Ethan hesitated. He had never owned a pet. His life had always been about numbers, contracts, lavish parties, and endless meetings. He had no time for small, trivial things, but it was shivering. He clenched his fist, then sighed. "All right," he muttered, then headed downstairs. The door swung open, and cold wind immediately rushed in, causing Ethan to shiver slightly. "Hey, little guy," he called, his voice warm but firm. "Are you planning to stand out there all night?" The dog didn't move, its small ears twitching as though debating whether to trust this person. It stepped back, but its gaze stayed fixed on Ethan. Ethan frowned, trying to see more clearly. The dog had an old leather collar, faded by the rain. It didn't seem to be a stray. Someone had once cared for it. Someone out there might be looking for it. A strong gust of wind blew by, making the dog's tiny body shake even more. Ethan gritted his teeth. God. All right. If you're not coming in, I'll just close the door. With that, he pretended to close the door. The dog immediately lifted a paw, hesitated for a few seconds, then cautiously stepped inside. Ethan closed the door behind it and exhaled a long breath. He crouched down and looked at the small creature that had just entered his home. Up close, he could see that its golden fur, though wet, still held a special beauty. Its eyes were clear, unblemished, but filled with so many things. Loyalty, sadness, or a memory lost, he didn't know. Ethan grabbed a large towel from the living room, knelt down, and gently wiped the rain off its body. At first, the dog seemed startled, but gradually, it began to relax. He carefully wiped each part, its soft, warm fur, the small ears, its bony feet, worn down from days of wandering. When he reached its neck, his hand paused for a moment. The collar had an engraved name. The letters were a little faded, but he could still read it. Bailey, Bailey, huh? Ethan murmured. The dog looked up at him, as if reacting to the name. He stayed silent for a few seconds, then smiled faintly. All right, Bailey. I guess you don't have anywhere to go tonight, so I suppose you can stay. Bailey didn't respond, but its eyes lit up a little, as if it understood his words. It no longer shivered much, curling up quietly on the warm blanket Ethan had just laid out. Ethan sat down on the chair, resting his chin on his hand, watching the small creature that had just entered his life. He didn't know what he was doing. But in his heart, there was a strange feeling, as if his life, which had only been about numbers and contracts, had just made a small shift, a shift he never saw coming, and little did he know, this simple decision would change both of their fates forever. Spring had arrived with light rain showers and warm breezes, as the trees in Ethan's garden began to sprout new leaves. The little dog also began to gradually adapt to its new home. Every morning, when the sunlight gently filtered through the window, the dog would run around the yard, its ears perked up, eyes sparkling, sometimes even jumping as if trying to catch the birds flying by. Ethan, by this time, had started to get used to the dog's presence in his life. At first, the dog's barking still startled him whenever he sat down to work. However, after a short while, it was no longer an annoyance. It had become an integral part of the peaceful atmosphere he was now enjoying, every afternoon. When work was over, Ethan would often take the dog for a walk in the nearby park. This was a completely new experience for him. Walking along the quiet paths with his loyal dog by his side, he felt relieved, a sense of relaxation that he had never experienced before. Their conversations weren't in words, but in glances, in the silent understanding that needed no words. The dog was no longer just a pet, it had gradually become Ethan's true companion, his partner. Every morning, when he woke up, the dog would be the first to approach him, wagging its tail and jumping up as if welcoming him into a new day. Ethan couldn't help but smile, feeling the genuine affection the dog had for him. He began to realize that every time he looked into the dog's eyes, he saw a part of himself, a part that didn't need to show off, didn't need attention, but simply wanted to be together, sharing quiet moments in life. On some evenings, when night fell and the house grew quiet, Ethan would sit on the sofa, reading a book or watching the news. The dog would curl up beside his feet, its eyes never leaving him, as if sensing his thoughts. Ethan would often stroke the dog's head, and in those peaceful moments, he felt an invisible connection, an understanding that no words could describe. Suddenly, one evening, as the wind from the window blew in, Ethan looked down at the dog curled up in his lap, and the feeling of their friendship had become so deep it felt inseparable. Memories of the dog, of the difficult days gone by, slowly flooded Ethan's mind. He remembered the first time he met the dog, when it wandered around the house because it was hungry, or the times it licked his hand as if thanking him for taking it in. Every action of the dog was filled with sincerity, an unconditional trust. "Thank you for being with me," Ethan whispered, feeling the harmony in every breath the dog took. "I'm not lonely anymore." Although the dog couldn't speak, Ethan knew it understood him. The dog's eyes always seemed to remind him of the core values in life: love, loyalty, and patience. He was no longer a wealthy man, nor a powerful billionaire CEO when beside this dog. He was simply an ordinary man, searching for peace in genuine relationships, and this dog was his truest friend. One more morning, when the first light of day peeked through the window, Ethan and the dog sat together on the grass, watching the sunrise. The dog lay nestled in his lap, its head resting on his chest like a child seeking protection. Ethan felt the invisible strength of this friendship, something he had never thought would exist in his life. He had once been a man living in the hustle and bustle of work. But now, moments like these had become the most important part of his life. Every day spent with the dog, every step they took on the park path was a step closer to a happiness he had never imagined. For the dog, nothing mattered more than living in the present moment, enjoying what was at hand. And for Ethan, those moments were the most precious things. This friendship, though never vocalized, had seeped into his heart as an undeniable truth. The friendship between a successful man and a stray dog gradually became an inseparable bond, a testament to the simplicity of life and the power of loyalty. And when thinking about what the dog had brought into his life, Ethan knew that sometimes, the best things in life don't have to be searched for far and wide, they are simply what have been right beside us all along. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with the program, we would appreciate it if you could leave a comment and share your thoughts in the comment section. If you find this program meaningful, don't hesitate to share it to support the channel and spread the value to everyone around you. Wishing you all a truly meaningful time. Time passed quickly, and with each day, Ethan felt the changes within himself more clearly. Raising and taking care of Buddy had become more than just a routine or responsibility, it had become an important part of his life. The long working hours that once seemed indispensable were now gradually being replaced by warm, brief mornings spent waking up with Buddy. Or those afternoon walks in the park with his loyal dog. Ethan couldn't pinpoint exactly when his work and personal life started to separate, but one thing was clear: under Buddy's influence, he no longer felt the blind passion for work and fame as he once did. In the past, work was always his top priority, and everything else came second. The long meetings, time-consuming projects, and partner meetings no longer appealed to him as they once did. He began to realize that he had overlooked the important things in life, simple things that held immense power. Every morning, instead of rushing straight into work, Ethan woke up early to exercise with Buddy, or simply to feed him breakfast and pet him before leaving the house. He had started to spend time on the moments that he had once considered insignificant. The slow walks along the park path in the early morning, the times Buddy frolicked with him in the yard, all of these brought Ethan a sense of peace and happiness that he had never felt before. Ethan's world, once filled with numbers, decisions, and strategies, now had a stopping point. That stopping point was Buddy. This not only marked a shift in Ethan's personal life but also impacted those around him. His employees began to notice a difference in Ethan's attitude. In the past, when an employee made a mistake, he wouldn't hesitate to criticize or even show anger. But now, he had become more patient, gentler, and more willing to listen to others' opinions. The tense meetings, where Ethan used to sit like a king with a cold, critical stare, had now turned into open discussions, where employees felt free to express their ideas and feelings without fear of criticism. He had become more approachable, less dominated by work, and had learned to balance work with life. One day, while sitting in his office with Buddy lying next to his feet, an unexpected phone call from a partner required him to rush out. However, that day, things did not go as planned. While driving to the meeting, a truck unexpectedly swerved into his lane, and everything happened too fast for Ethan to react. In an instant, Ethan's car was hit hard, spinning around and veering off the road. The world around him became blurry, and as he struggled to open his eyes, in that brief moment, he saw Buddy standing outside the car window, barking loudly. Buddy had run out and jumped into the car, instinctively trying to save his owner. The dog immediately ran to the car door, scratching at it as if trying to pull Ethan out. Then, with incredible determination, Buddy bit the seatbelt and pulled him out of the car. Just a moment longer. And without Buddy, Ethan might not have survived. From that incident, their relationship transcended the simple bond between owner and pet. Buddy was not only a loyal friend but also a protector, a lifesaver when needed. Ethan realized that in that dangerous moment, Buddy didn't think of himself, he was entirely focused on saving him. This sacrifice made Ethan feel incredibly grateful and love Buddy more than ever. This feeling of love, he knew, was something he could never find in anyone else but his dog. It was strange how the relationship between a human and an animal could become so deep. Ethan understood that in life, it's not always necessary to have grand words or actions to express love. One morning, like any other, Ethan woke up in his large mansion, with the soft sunlight gently streaming through the window. Buddy was still curled up beside his feet, his tail wagging gently as Ethan awoke. They had become an inseparable part of each other's lives. Those simple moments, the peaceful mornings with his beloved dog, were the most precious moments Ethan had. However, everything suddenly changed one morning when Ethan opened his phone and scrolled through social media posts. A headline caught his eye: "Lost dog, has anyone seen this dog?" Ethan clicked on the link without thinking too much, but when the image in the post appeared, his heart suddenly ached. It was a picture of Buddy. The picture of the dog with golden brown fur, sparkling eyes, and a beard longer than when he first arrived. This was Buddy, the very dog Ethan had adopted 2 years ago. But what shocked and stunned Ethan was not just seeing Buddy, but the caption underneath the photo: "This dog went missing 2 years ago. Its original owner is still searching and is heartbroken because they don't know its whereabouts." Ethan couldn't believe his eyes. For the past 2 years, Buddy had been by his side, sharing countless joys and sorrows. It was Buddy who helped him change, making him realize the true values in life. He couldn't imagine what life would be like without his loyal companion. But now, he had to face a painful truth: Buddy wasn't his dog. It was a lost animal, and its owner, someone who had been suffering from the loss of a family member, had been searching for it all this time. One morning, like any other, Ethan woke up in his large mansion, with the soft sunlight gently streaming through the window. Buddy was still curled up beside his feet, his tail wagging gently as Ethan awoke. They had become an inseparable part of each other's lives. Those simple moments, the peaceful mornings with his beloved dog, were the most precious moments Ethan had. However, everything suddenly changed one morning when Ethan opened his phone and scrolled through social media posts. A headline caught his eye: "Lost dog, has anyone seen this dog?" Ethan clicked on the link without thinking too much, but when the image in the post appeared, his heart suddenly ached. It was a picture of Buddy. The picture of the dog with golden brown fur, sparkling eyes, and a beard longer than when he first arrived. This was Buddy, the very dog Ethan had adopted 2 years ago. But what shocked and stunned Ethan was not just seeing Buddy, but the caption underneath the photo: "This dog went missing 2 years ago. Its original owner is still searching and is heartbroken because they don't know its whereabouts." Ethan couldn't believe his eyes. For the past 2 years, Buddy had been by his side, sharing countless joys and sorrows. It was Buddy who helped him change, making him realize the true values in life. He couldn't imagine what life would be like without his loyal companion. But now, he had to face a painful truth: Buddy wasn't his dog. It was a lost animal, and its owner, someone who had been suffering from the loss of a family member, had been searching for it all this time. Ethan's vision blurred, not sure if it was from tears or the overwhelming pain and tension rising in his chest. He didn't know what to do. His heart tightened at the thought of having to return Buddy to its original owner. Even though, for the past 2 years, Buddy had been an important part of his life. The dog was not just a companion, but also a source of encouragement, someone who shared his joys and sorrows, a friend who never left. And now, he had to face the fact that someone was waiting for this dog to come back. Ethan looked at Buddy lying next to him, his gentle eyes, his thin but strong body. He reached out and stroked Buddy's head, feeling the soft fur under his palm. The dog obediently licked his hand, as if sensing his owner's worry and confusion. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He couldn't imagine what his life would be like without Buddy. But at the same time, he couldn't deny that Buddy didn't belong to him, at least not entirely. The dog had an original owner, someone who had been desperately searching for it and would surely feel what it would be like to have their beloved friend back after 2 years of separation. This pain made it impossible for Ethan to make a decision right away. He could keep Buddy and continue living a happy life with him, but would that be right? Could he live peacefully knowing that someone was enduring this pain of loss? A part of him wanted to protect Buddy forever, to keep the dog by his side, but another part of him wanted to return Buddy to its true owner, someone who might need Buddy just as much as he did. Ethan decided to learn more about Buddy's original owner, someone he had never known. He spent time researching the post and contacting Buddy's owner through the means available to him. Throughout this process, he felt as though he was standing at a crossroads, not knowing which path to choose. The love for Buddy, the friendship, and loyalty between them made it hard for him to give up, but at the same time, he couldn't ignore the pain of the other person. A meeting was scheduled. Ethan decided to meet Buddy's original owner, to better understand the feelings they had for the dog, and to perhaps make a final decision. As he looked into Buddy's clear eyes, he realized one important thing: no matter what decision he made, the love Buddy had for him and vice versa was undeniable. But was this sacrifice worth what Buddy's original owner had lost? The day of the meeting was approaching. Ethan couldn't help but feel anxious and tense. The question of whether to keep Buddy or return him kept swirling in his mind. He knew that whatever he decided, this big change wouldn't be easy. Because it wasn't just a simple decision, it was a challenge of loyalty, love, and responsibility, things Ethan had learned over the past 2 years with Buddy. But would Buddy still remember his original owner? Would the memories of his old family make Buddy return, or would the dog choose to stay with him, where he had found love and warmth? Ethan didn't know the answer. The only thing he knew for sure was that no matter what decision he made, he would always cherish what Buddy had brought to his life. The day that Ethan had to face the most important decision of his life finally arrived. He looked at the image of Buddy, peacefully sleeping next to him, curled up in a warm blanket, eyes closed as if unaware of what was about to happen. The months spent together had deepened their bond, and now the truth Ethan had always avoided, that Buddy didn't belong to him, was about to be revealed. Ethan took a deep breath, his hands still gently stroking Buddy's back, as if seeking some comfort from the dog. He had made up his mind. This morning, he would meet Buddy's original owner, the person who had been searching for his dog in pain all this time. It was the right thing to do, no matter how much it hurt his heart. He had contacted the original owner and arranged a meeting in the park, where Buddy often played with him. Finally, Buddy's original owner appeared. A man in his 40s, with a face marked by hardship and unhealed pain, stood there, looking around as if searching for something familiar. When his gaze accidentally met Buddy's, tears began to roll down his cheeks. Both Ethan and Buddy's original owner felt the overwhelming emotion in that moment. The original owner, named Mark, walked over, his eyes shining with an indescribable pain. He knelt down next to Buddy, his hands trembling, unable to believe what his eyes were seeing. Mark called out the dog's name. "Buddy, is that you?" His voice was choked, as if a part of his soul had returned. Buddy, at that moment, opened his eyes, saw the man, and the dog's ears perked up. They looked at each other for a long time, and then something miraculous happened. Buddy slowly moved closer to Mark, his eyes sparkling brightly, as if recognizing the owner he had once loved. Both of them seemed to be drawn together by an invisible connection, a bond that had not faded, despite the passing of time. Mark couldn't hold back his tears any longer. He hugged Buddy tightly, his head bowing into the dog's soft fur, unable to stop the tears. "Thank you. Thank you," Mark said, his voice choked. "Finally, I found you, Buddy. I thought I would never see you again." Ethan stood quietly to one side, watching the scene with an indescribable feeling. His heart felt like it was breaking as he saw Mark hugging Buddy. He had hoped that Buddy would recognize his original owner, but he didn't know what to do. He couldn't be jealous or selfish when seeing Mark's joy. A part of him wanted Buddy to stay with him because the dog had become an essential part of his life, but he also understood that he couldn't keep Buddy selfishly like this. When Mark released Buddy, the dog didn't run to him immediately, but instead sat silently, as if torn between the two. Ethan sensed Buddy's inner turmoil, as if the dog was standing between two worlds. Part of Buddy wanted to go back to his original owner, but another part of him couldn't bear to leave the companion who had been with him for the past 2 years, Ethan. Mark turned to Ethan with a look of gratitude, but also full of awkwardness. "I know you've given Buddy all your care, love, and attention. I don't know how to thank you." Ethan just looked at him for a long moment, then replied, his voice hoarse with emotion, "Buddy is not just my pet. He is my companion, my family. I know he belongs to you, but I can't deny that for the past 2 years, he has been a part of my life." Mark looked down at Buddy, then back at Ethan, as if searching for an answer. Finally, he said, "I understand. I know that your love for Buddy is real. And I know that he loves you too. But I can't keep living in this pain. I need him, but if he wants to stay with you, I will respect that." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He looked at Buddy, his eyes full of conflict. Part of him wanted to keep Buddy with him, but he also understood that love couldn't be about possession. And in the end, he knew that Buddy needed to be free to choose. Finally, Buddy stood up, his eyes flicking between the two men. He started walking toward Mark, but then stopped, turned back to look at Ethan, his eyes bright, as if to say goodbye. But in that gaze, there was a tenderness, a love that could never be forgotten. After a few seconds, Buddy turned back, running into Mark's arms, as if he had made up his mind about where he truly belonged. Mark hugged Buddy tightly, smiling through his tears. "Thank you so much, Ethan. You've given me precious years with Buddy. I will never forget your kindness." Ethan stood there, his heart shattered, but he also felt a sense of relief. Buddy's eyes, though bright, also full of gratitude, said it all. The dog could now return to his original owner, where he truly belonged, but he would always remember the friend who had changed his life. This moment, though painful, was filled with love and sacrifice. Ethan knew that love wasn't about possession, but about giving, and he had done that for Buddy. The meeting that day between Ethan, Mark, and Buddy made everything clearer than ever. Although everything around them seemed to have reached its conclusion, in Ethan's heart, the biggest question still had no answer. What he needed to do now was not to make a quick decision, but to listen to his own heart, and Buddy's heart, the dog he had loved as a part of his family. Mark looked into Buddy's eyes, eyes full of gratitude and unconditional love. He sat down beside Buddy and gently petted the dog's head. It seemed as though time had stopped, and in that moment, Mark realized that Buddy had a new life, filled with love and careful attention. It was Ethan's love for the dog that had allowed Buddy to live happily, healthily, and peacefully over the past 2 years, but deep in Mark's heart, he knew that Buddy was not an animal to possess. He had missed out on so much time with the dog, and now, he had to face a harsh reality. Buddy had found a new family, one where it had truly been loved. Mark turned to Ethan, his eyes no longer filled with pain, but with understanding and empathy. He knew that if Buddy could not live happily with him, at least the dog would have a good life with Ethan. "Ethan," Mark began, his voice lowering, "I've thought a lot about this. You've given Buddy a life full of love and care that I couldn't provide. And I know that, even if he comes back to me, Buddy will always remember you." Ethan stood still, emotions overwhelming him. He looked at Buddy, gazing into the dog's affectionate eyes. The years they had spent together had given him a wonderful friendship, an unconditional love he had never imagined. He knew he had done everything for Buddy, but could he continue to have Buddy stay with him, or would he just be an old friend in the dog's life? "Mark," Ethan said, his voice dropping, "I can't say that I don't want Buddy to stay with me. But if I love him, I have to let him choose. I don't want to keep Buddy because of my selfishness. I've received his love, and I've done everything to give him the best life. But if that's his decision, I will respect it." Mark looked at Buddy, then back at Ethan. He was silent for a while, then finally said, "I know that if I let Buddy stay with you, I will have no regrets. Every time I see him happy and healthy, I won't feel guilty. Because I know Buddy has found where he truly belongs." With those words, a decision was made. Mark looked at Buddy one last time, then turned to Ethan. He sighed, his eyes shining with a sense of peace. "I found Buddy again, but now I know, the best place for him is with you. Let him stay with you, Ethan." "Thank you for everything." Ethan couldn't say anything except to look at Mark with grateful and moved eyes. "Thank you, Mark. I will take care of Buddy for the rest of my life." Buddy, at this moment, seemed to understand everything that had happened. He looked at Mark, then turned to look at Ethan. And then, in a brief but meaningful moment, Buddy walked over to Ethan and snuggled into his arms, as if finding a safe place, a place where he felt the most loved. Mark saw this scene, and though his heart still ached, he also felt at peace, because finally, Buddy had found where he belonged. "Thank you, Ethan," Mark said one last time, then stood up and silently walked away. "Take good care of Buddy," Ethan nodded, saying nothing more. He watched Mark leave, then embraced Buddy again, feeling the warmth and love the dog had brought into his life. He couldn't imagine what life would be like without Buddy's presence. Every day that passed, every moment with the dog became an unforgettable memory, and so, their lives continued, with love, loyalty, and an unbreakable bond. The dog, now officially a part of the family, and the friendship between Ethan and Buddy would remain strong forever, despite all of life's challenges. The story ends with a profound message: love and loyalty are not about possession, but about sacrifice and giving. Ethan learned that true love is not about holding tight, but about letting the one you love live happily. Just like Buddy, throughout his life, he will always have a place to return to, a place where love and loyalty will forever endure. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to share and subscribe to the channel to not miss out on more inspiring stories. Thank you for following and supporting.